In the summer of 1880, three sisters posed for what should have been an ordinary family portrait in their Victorian parlor. But when the photograph was developed, two of the girls had been dead for over 6 months. The Whitmore family of Salem, Massachusetts, was considered respectable by all accounts in the late 19th century. Thomas Whitmore owned a modest but successful dry goods store on Federal Street, while his wife Margaret managed their household with the efficiency expected of women of their social standing. Their three daughters, Eleanor, age 12, Catherine, age 10, and little Josephine, just 7, were described by neighbors as well-mannered children who attended Sunday services regularly at the First Presbyterian Church. The photograph in question was discovered in 2019 during the estate sale of the Whitmore family's final descendant, an elderly woman named Ruth Pemberton who had lived alone in the original family home for 63 years. Among the dusty boxes of family memorabilia, local historian Dr. Sarah Chun found a daguerreotype in a cracked leather frame, its silver surface tarnished but still remarkably clear. The image showed 3 young girls in matching dark dresses, their faces solemn in the manner typical of Victorian photography, standing before an ornate wallpapered wall. What struck Dr. Chun immediately was the unusual composition of the photograph. While Eleanor, the eldest daughter, stood clearly in the center foreground, her 2 younger sisters appeared strangely positioned. Catherine seemed to be partially transparent, her outline blurring into the wallpaper behind her, while Josephine's figure cast no shadow on the floor despite the obvious directional lighting from the photographer's apparatus. Initially, Dr. Chun attributed these anomalies to the primitive photographic techniques of the era. Double exposures and chemical irregularities were common problems in early daguerreotype processing. She cataloged the photograph among the other family artifacts and prepared to donate the collection to the Salem Historical Society. But something about the image continued to disturb her professional sensibilities. 3 weeks later, while digitizing the photograph for the Historical Society's archives, Dr. Chun used high-resolution scanning equipment that revealed details invisible to the naked eye. Under magnification, she noticed that while Eleanor's dress showed the natural wrinkles and fabric texture one would expect, the clothing worn by Catherine and Josephine appeared oddly flat, as if the material had been painted directly onto the photographic plate rather than captured through the lens. This discovery prompted Dr. Chun to examine the Salem vital records for 1880. What she found contradicted everything the photograph seemed to depict. According to the official death certificates filed with the town clerk, both Catherine Whitmore and Josephine Whitmore had died in January of 1880, Catherine on January 15th from scarlet fever, and Josephine 3 days later from the same disease. The photograph, based on the clothing styles and seasonal light visible through the parlor window, had clearly been taken during the summer months, at least 6 months after both younger girls were buried in Salem's Green Lawn Cemetery. Dr. Chen's initial assumption was that the death certificates had been misfiled, or that she had confused the Whitmore family with another family of the same name. She spent the following week combing through church registries, newspaper obituaries, and cemetery records, hoping to resolve what seemed to be a simple administrative mistake. Instead, the evidence only deepened the mystery. The Salem Evening News had published obituaries for both Catherine and Josephine Whitmore in January 1880, describing their deaths as a tragic loss to the community, and noting that they had been beloved students at the Federal Street Grammar School. The church registry at First Presbyterian contained entries recording their deaths and burial services, conducted by Reverend William Ashford on January 19th and 22nd respectively. Most conclusively, the sexton's records at Greenlawn Cemetery showed payment received from Thomas Whitmore for 2 burial plots in the children's section. Yet the photograph remained, undeniably depicting 3 living children in what appeared to be the summer of 1880. Dr. Chun contacted her colleague, Professor Michael Hartley, who specialized in 19th century photographic techniques at Boston University. When she presented him with both the digital scans and the original daguerreotype, his initial reaction mirrored her own. The anomalies in the image were likely the result of technical limitations rather than supernatural intervention. Professor Hartley's analysis, however, yielded unexpected results. The daguerreotype showed none of the chemical irregularities typical of double exposures. The silver particles in the emulsion were evenly distributed, suggesting a single, properly executed exposure. More troubling, Spectrographic analysis of the image revealed that the figures of Catherine and Josephine contained trace amounts of mercury compounds not found elsewhere in the photograph, compounds that had not been used in daguerreotype processing since the early 1870s. Determined to resolve the mystery, Dr. Chon expanded her investigation to include the broader context of the Whitmore family's life in 1880. She discovered that Thomas Whitmore had been struggling financially during this period, with his dry goods business facing increased competition from larger establishments in nearby Boston. Margaret Whitmore's health had been declining since the deaths of her two younger daughters, and neighbors reported that she rarely left the house after the funerals. More significantly, Dr. Chun found records indicating that the family had consulted with a photographer named Ezra Blackwood in August of 1880, paying him the substantial sum of $5 for specialized portraiture services. Blackwood's advertisement in the Salem Evening News had promoted his ability to create memorial photographs of the highest quality, preserving the memory of loved ones through innovative photographic techniques. Memorial photography was not uncommon in the Victorian era. Families frequently commissioned portraits of deceased relatives, particularly children, as a means of preserving their memory. These photographs, known as mourning portraits, typically depicted the deceased person arranged as if sleeping or positioned among living family members. What made the Whitmore photograph unusual was that Catherine and Josephine appeared alive and alert, standing naturally beside their living sister. Dr. Chen's research into Ezra Blackwood revealed a photographer whose reputation was both remarkable and troubling. Former clients praised his ability to create portraits that seemed to capture the essence of the deceased, but several testimonials contained disturbing references to subjects who appeared too lifelike or unnaturally present in his photographs. One review, published in the Boston Herald in September 1880, described a portrait session where the reviewer claimed to have seen movement in the finished photograph when viewed under certain lighting conditions. The most unsettling testimony came from a letter written by Reverend William Ashford to the Bishop of Massachusetts in November 1880. In this correspondence, discovered in the diocesan archives, Reverend Ashford expressed concern about what he termed unwholesome practices connected to memorial photography in his parish. He wrote, "Several families have reported strange occurrences following their sessions with the photographer Blackwood. They speak of hearing their deceased children's voices in their homes and seeing small figures moving through the corridors at night." Dr. Chon attempted to trace Ezra Blackwood's career beyond his time in Salem, but the photographer seemed to have vanished from public records after November 1880. His studio on Chestnut Street was abandoned sometime in December of that year, with the landlord reporting that Blackwood had left behind only a few pieces of damaged photographic equipment and several unmarked glass plates. The investigation took a deeply personal turn when Dr. Chun received an anonymous package at her office in January 2020. The package contained a second daguerreotype depicting an entirely different family, a man and woman in formal Victorian attire, flanked by 4 children of varying ages. Like the Whitmore photograph, some of the subjects appeared normal while others seemed strangely translucent or incorrectly shadowed. A note accompanying the photograph bore only a brief message. The Ashford family, October 1880. 3 of the children died in September. Research into the Ashford family confirmed the note's claims. The Salem death records showed that 3 of Reverend William Ashford's children had indeed died in September 1880 from what was listed as acute gastroenteritis. More disturbing was the discovery that Reverend Ashford himself had died unexpectedly in December 1880, just weeks after writing his concerned letter to the bishop. By March 2020, Dr. Chun had begun experiencing what she initially dismissed as stress-related symptoms. She found herself waking in the early hours of the morning with vivid dreams of Victorian parlors and the sound of children's laughter echoing through empty rooms. More unsettling were the moments when she thought she glimpsed small figures moving in her peripheral vision while working late in her office. These experiences intensified after she received a second anonymous package in April containing what appeared to be Ezra Blackwood's personal journal. The journal entries documented Blackwood's development of what he called ethereal portraiture, a photographic technique that he claimed could capture the essential spirit of the departed even after their physical forms had returned to Earth. Blackwood's early entries described conventional memorial photography, but by July 1880, his writing had taken on an increasingly obsessive tone. The most chilling entries appeared in August and September of 1880, where Blackwood described visits to Greenlawn Cemetery during new moon phases, collecting what he euphemistically referred to as essential compounds from recently disturbed graves. These materials, when mixed with his photographic emulsion, allowed him to create images that were more than mere photographs, but windows through which the departed might gaze once more upon the living world. The journal's final entry, dated November 15, 1880, was written in an increasingly erratic hand. They come to me now without summoning. The children appear in my studio even when no portraits are being taken. They stand in the corners, patient and silent, waiting for something I cannot provide. I have opened doors that I cannot close, and I fear the consequences of my ambition. Dr. Chen's attempts to authenticate the journal confirmed that the paper and ink were consistent with materials available in the 1880s. Most significantly, chemical analysis of the ink revealed traces of mercury compounds identical to those found in the anomalous areas of the Whitmore photograph. During the authentication process, Dr. Chen's disturbing experiences escalated dramatically. She began finding small handprints on the windows of her office and home, always appearing overnight and always at the height a child might leave them. Her colleagues noticed that she had become increasingly withdrawn and frequently spoke of feeling watched while working alone. In September 2020, Dr. Chen made a discovery that would provide the final piece of the puzzle. While researching property records for Blackwood's former studio, she learned that the building had been demolished in 1962, but construction crews had discovered a hidden cellar that had not appeared in the original building plans. The police report from the discovery described a small underground chamber containing photographic equipment, dozens of glass plates, and what were identified as organic materials of unknown origin. Most disturbing was the discovery of a collection of children's personal belongings, shoes, hair ribbons, small toys, all dating to the 1880s. These items were found arranged in precise rows along the cellar walls, each accompanied by a small placard bearing a child's name and date of death, written in Ezra Blackwood's distinctive handwriting. Among these items, Dr. Chen identified objects that belonged to Catherine and Josephine Whitmore, a pair of small leather boots and a porcelain doll that matched descriptions in the family's probate records. The presence of these items in Blackwood's hidden chamber suggested a connection between the photographer and the deceased children that went far beyond professional memorial portraiture. In December 2020, nearly a year after beginning her investigation, Dr. Chen received what would be the final anonymous communication. This package contained a modern digital photograph of the Whitmore family daguerreotype, but the image showed a disturbing change from the original. While Eleanor remained clearly visible, the figures of Catherine and Josephine had become significantly more transparent. More unsettling was the appearance of additional figures in the background, shadowy forms that seemed to crowd behind the three girls. Dr. Chen's final report, submitted to the Salem Historical Society in January 2021, concluded that the Whitmore family photograph represented either an elaborate hoax using techniques unknown to historical photography experts, or evidence of phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of death and human consciousness. Her recommendation was that the photograph be sealed in the Society's archives and not displayed for public viewing. However, when the Historical Society attempted to retrieve the daguerreotype from Dr. Chen's office, they discovered that she had disappeared. Her colleagues reported that she had not been seen since late December 2020, and her apartment showed signs of hasty abandonment. All materials related to her investigation had been removed. The original daguerreotype was found on her desk, but its image had changed once again. Eleanor Whitmore now stood alone in the Victorian parlor, her expression no longer the solemn pose typical of 19th century portraiture, but a look of profound sadness and longing. The spaces where her sisters had appeared were now empty. A handwritten note in Dr. Chen's handwriting was discovered beside the photograph. They wanted to go home. I helped them find their way. The living should not interfere with the natural order of death and memory. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and some photographs should never be taken. The Salem Historical Society has classified the Whitmore photograph as part of their restricted collection, available only to qualified researchers with special permission. However, Several staff members have reported strange occurrences in the archive room where the daguerreotype is stored. The sound of children's voices, the appearance of small figures reflected in the glass cases, and the persistent sensation of being watched by unseen observers. Recent investigations have revealed that Blackwood's practice may have been far more extensive than initially understood, with similar photographs discovered in collections throughout New England. Each discovery has been accompanied by reports of unexplained phenomena and, in some cases, the mysterious disappearance of researchers who studied the images too closely. The mystery of the Whitmore family photograph remains unsolved, serving as a chilling reminder that some doors between the world of the living and the realm of the dead should perhaps remain forever closed.